to Chess and Psychology from Studio D. Should be fun, huh? Alright, so, okay. Today I want to show you a very interesting game between, oh boy, am I muted? Please don't be muted. Let me double check. Please don't be muted. I am not muted. Great. I was muted at the beginning, probably. Okay, so today I am joining you from my house. Well, current house. I'm changing dorms on Friday, which is gonna be fun, huh? With my lovely cat, Pishi. So those of you who have been joining us on Twitch for over the past week, 10 days, you've been introduced to Pishi and his charms of jumping around and hopefully putting up a good show. Not sure if he's gonna do that today. He just ate like half an hour ago, so probably sleepy. Alright, so besides the cat show that I had for you, I also have a very interesting game that was played between Petrosian and Unzicker. This one is one of my favorite games. I've watched some other games from Unzicker, definitely a lot more games have been watched from Petrosian, so I kind of, I think this game was a very interesting kind of like just clash between them. It's the game that happened in Hamburg in 1960, so if anybody likes to add it to their own database, feel free to do so. And yeah, this game I kind of like the King March title because, as you will see, the king is gonna have a very, very long march. We've had some other games, we've seen some other games like this in different classes when the king was just running around or not castling, but this one was especially interesting to me. Oh, someone from Nigeria. Wow, that's pretty late there. Thank you for staying up. Alright, so let's jump in and start looking at the game. So far we have a somewhat of a normal opening. Torre, I believe. Torre, yeah. Then if it was c3, it would be Kole. And finally c4. Well, now this is actually like a queen's gambit, so never mind. Yeah, thank you for joining. I have the chats right here, so if I'm moving around, I am just trying to look at the chat more frequently. Well, alright, so this is the position that so far the opening turned into. So if you play this with white, feel free to discuss it in the chat, or as black, what do you play? Personally, as black, I don't do the c6. I don't actually play the Queen's Gambit as often. I usually just play Nimzo Indian or Grunfeld, but I usually try this Lasker line with Bishop e7, Knight e4, and that's something that I actually wanted to talk about previously. In one of our classes, we did like a poll if we should do Lasker or not, and unfortunately Lasker opening lost, but this is something that I definitely want to show you guys in soon future, hopefully next week, now that we are kind of setting the grounds for it. Wow, it's all over the place. Brooklyn, India, Norway, St. Louis, Egypt. Whoa, Egypt is one of those places I've always wanted to go and I just never got the chance, but I love the history. Alright, so anyways, let's look at the game that happened here. So far everything is normal, just white's trying to develop, aim for short castle, black is developing, aiming for short castle, and knight belongs on c3, no questions there. h6, I completely agree with that as well, just kicking the bishop away from the pin. Well, knight d7 seems to be the logical play, especially because we're not doing this c5 anymore, so knight gotta go to d7. Oh, I've been to Portugal actually in 2017. Yeah, right after Gibraltar, I went to Portugal. The Lisbon Open. It was pretty interesting. I liked it. Alright, so for any of my camp kids who are here, we have looked at we have talked more in depth about pawn structures, so like isolated pawns, hanging pawns, pawn majority attacks, minority attacks. We've talked about different pawn structures in camp, so if anybody's here, feel free to show off your knowledge. But so, question for you guys: now that this CD5, do you think CD5 is a good move, or do you think taking with E would be a better choice? Or even knight. I think knight is also a interesting choice. So what do you guys like between these three? I think ED5 might be a little bit more solid compared to knight takes, but does anything about c takes d5 worries you? Because if you like c takes d5, then maybe you could tell me something like, what do you plan to do with your bishop in this position? Where are you gonna place this bishop? Yeah, I do think e takes d5 is also better. I think knight d5 is also doable, but not really sure what to do with this bishop. That's the biggest problem when you take with the c, because what are you gonna do now? b6, bishop b7? Your bishop is still pretty blinded. b6, try to do bishop a6, possible, but it's kind of like dreaming, because even if that changes, this square is weak, this knight can jump. And I also think the other thing to think about is that in this position, white is pretty ready to do stuff in your queen side, right? All the pieces are kind of pointing towards your queen side. So when you take with the pawn, it kind of already gives off a little bit of a more ideas for white to start thinking about, some new squares to jump around in. So I don't really like taking with the c, just because it would give my opponents way too much chances and way too much hope. So that's why we could take with e. Even taking with e, now this is the crossbar pawn structures, and knight on d7 isn't ideal. So I understand the hesitation on taking with the knight, with the pawn, because in crossbar pawn structure there is another idea to do like knight a6, knight c7, knight e6, do like a g6, knight g7, put the bishop on f5, because we kind of want to just get this bishop to f5 in the crossbar pawn structures, right? So that's something kind of interesting that I kind of would, I mean, I understand not taking with the e, because your bishop is kind of hard to get to f5, but taking with the knight, I'm a little skeptical on this, just because, let's say take, and then just bishop d3, maybe knight f6, you still end up in this crossbar pawn structure. I mean, a little bit easier, because you don't really, your knight on d7 isn't really blocking stuff as much, but still at the same time, this bishop is still a problem. You don't really know what to do with it. So, I mean, I guess all I'm trying to say is I understand the confusion, but you still gotta, you shouldn't let your opponent just get advantage so easy like this. And yes, that is a sleeping cat in the background. It's not really sleeping, he's more like napping. He is awake. He might wiggle his tail for us a little, or get up and give himself a small bath, as he has been doing in our Twitch channel when I'm streaming. So, alright, back to the game. Petrosian knows how to use this advantage, and he went for bishop d3, already putting the bishop in the good diagonal. Black tries to create something in the queen side, but I think it's still a little bit of a stretch. I'm gonna ask you, what do you think white should do after b5, but I'm gonna tell you a little bit of something that's better than b5. So knight b8 would actually be better than b5, and the idea is that you're simply gonna put like knight c6, relocate this knight, because previously you couldn't play knight c6 because there was a pawn on c6, right? But now you could try knight c6 and maybe go for b4 square, something like that. I mean, I don't know if I would actually play knight b8 in the real game, but knight b8 actually is a little bit better right now. You could think about something like knight h5 as well, like knight h5, try to kick this bishop around a little, maybe. Ooh, taking with the pawn. This is getting a little uncomfortable for my knight g4 coming next. gotta play g6. Yeah, I don't really like this either, so alright, let's just keep looking at b5. So, b5, what do you think is the best move for white? I guess the main thing you should consider is, are you actually worried about the move b4? Because if you're not really worried from like black playing b4, then you don't really have to stop. You don't have to stop it. So you don't really need to actually think about a3. So keep in mind how we talked about a little bit earlier on how all of the white's pieces are kind of like marching on the queen side, or basically keeping an eye on the queen side. So maybe we could think about something that tries to give us some actual targets in the queen side, because we only have like, we have some spatial advantage. We need to try and convert it into something like a real target to attack. And oh, I see a camp kit here. How are you doing, Chess King? Yeah, you should know this. We've talked about converting advantage in our camps, haven't we? So I see an a4, I see a3, I see e4. I think e4 is interesting, but not right now. That's something that you gotta do way later. Now you have to focus on the queen side. Yeah, also e4 could have some potential problems, such as take. And if you take back, now bishop b7, and now rook c8 coming, attacking your queen. It's getting black is getting some room to breathe. We don't want our opponent to have chances of breathing. Well, just over the board. So what now? I don't like the idea a3 because it's a little bit pointless. When we play a3, we're not really like, we kind of want him to play b4. We want to provoke b4 because we want to go after this a6 pawn. So I do like the idea of a4. Good job on thinking about a4. And you do want to provoke this. Also, if taking on a4, now this is very weak. You just take it with the knight. You got c5 square, you got b6 to try and jump into. This is a very weak pawn. You can just play queen e2 and start attacking this. No, this is very good. This is very good for white. So let's look at b4. What do you want to do with this knight after b4? You basically have, well, I kind of want to say two choices. You can go e2 or a2. You could consider d1 or b1, but d1 you're not really going anywhere after that, and b1 you simply just go to d2, b3 at max, which is not, I mean, b3 is an interesting square, but you can achieve that with either of them, with knight e2 or a2. So what do you want to do with this knight now? Where do you think this knight can go? Because pretty much when you play something, black is going to try and play a5 soon, depending, well, not really depending on where you go, but I think the main thing to understand right now is that even wherever the knight goes, e2 or a2 is not a permanent space. So you're trying to relocate that knight to another square, and I'm kind of waiting to see your opinions on that mysterious square in the chat. So that's what I'm saying, Chess King. I don't necessarily think a2 is a bad square, because a2 is not the permanent place. You're just gonna relocate it. So yeah, exactly. Thank you, Prince Lastrado. We do want to bring the knight back to b3. So knight a2 went with knight e8. I understand that because bishop c7 could be pumping up, and then we are simply doing this knight e8, and finally we get this knight b3. So we finally got the knight to b3. Our knight is in a very interesting position. This knight is kind of stuck here because if you move it, you get bishop c7, then you lose a5. You also can't really do knight b6 because, well, knight c5 is coming up. So what about now? Let's say black plays bishop a6. Now, what do you want to do? Do you want to exchange? Do you want to take that bishop? or do you want to simply wait for opponent to take your bishop on d3? Because you can't really avoid that bishop exchange, so you're basically choosing between whether or not you should take it first or wait for opponent to take it. So what do we think we should do here? Okay, so I have a rook c1, I have a take on a6. Alright, interesting. I do think it's a good choice to take over here, to be honest. We can, because that's something that's happening, and if we wait for opponent to take it, then the opponent can also get rook c8. But if we take it first, now this rook is also misplaced and can't really go to c6 next move. So that's kind of why I don't really, I mean, I didn't really like the idea of allowing opponent to play rook c8. So now that the rook c, I mean, he can't really get into the c file with support. I think that's a better choice. But now we gotta try and figure out how do we want to relocate our pieces. Because this is a good bishop. I agree with that. This is a very interesting knight. The knight is in a good place. Bishop is in a good place. This knight could also be in a better place, probably. But what about your queen? So the pieces that we kind of really need to relocate is the queen and possibly the rooks. So what should we do now? I do like the idea of rook c1, to be honest, but the one thing that black does want to do is something on d6, maybe bishop d6, maybe knight d6. So we can't really stop that. So all we can do is try to make it harder for black to achieve that goal. Alright, so I see a rook c1, I see a queen e2. Not necessarily queen e2, queen d3 is a little bit better, but I like your idea. So after queen d3, let's say rook goes to a7, and then we can try to bring the rook on c1. So question, which rook do you think is better to bring to c1, or does it even matter? Are we gonna just double it up? What do you guys think we should do? I also want to point out, remember when black played bishop a6 and exchanged the bishops like 2-3 moves ago? We were thinking about, probably black was thinking, ooh, this is such a good idea, I'm getting rid of my bad bishop, which was true at the time, but at the same time now all of these white squares are kind of weakened, so we can go after it. Alright, I see, I like the idea of bringing the rook fc1. Alright, good choice. If we need to double up, we will double up, but let's keep it safe. Yeah, let's bring up the f rook. Good choice, everybody. So let's say now black plays knight d6. What shall we do? Keep in mind we can't take it. If we don't take it, now c4 and e4 are accessible for black. So either you gotta protect those squares or you gotta take that knight. So what shall we do? Shall we take on d6 or should we try knight d2? Alright, I see some knight d2 ideas. I think the problem with playing knight d2 is, this knight b6 somehow is bothering me. Yeah, you do get knight c5, but still there's a good chance for knight c4. So this is something that I'm kind of trying to, we don't really want to deal with. Like, yes, we can try b3, take, now bishop comes exchange. So yeah, this is a good knight up here, but again there's knight d7 trying to get rid of it. So I think the biggest question is, do you see the future of this game? Do you think that in a long run this bishop is going to be more useful than a knight? So I think that's the only thing to actually think about, because um, it is kind of hard to give up this bishop. I agree, but it's we kind of have to prevent have to give up this kind of strong bishop to prevent this blocking of c file. Exactly. Thank you, as mentioned in the chat as well. That was a very good point. Thank you. So take rook c6. This is giving me some real good flashbacks to the camp stuff that we've done. Some stuff about outposts, just how to use the open file. So this is a very cool gain of tempi, right? We're just getting this rook c6, and you can't really kick this rook away at the moment. Well, let me rephrase that. You don't have a good way of kicking this rook away at the moment, because yes, you can play knight b8, and that's what Unzicker played in the game, but I'm also putting your knight in 8th rank, and that's not really what we want to do, right? So, so now, what should we do with the rook? You have very limited choices, so I'm more looking like something that could form more of an idea, or like, so we do this and then do that, and then we want that, something, just a very short plan on what should we do with our pieces. Knight e5 is a blunder. Bishop takes e5. Your rook is still in huge trouble. Careful. Yeah, rook c2. Just bring it back, and then we are going to play rook c1. So, I think this is a very we can just do this. I don't really like that knight a5 has a bit. I mean, I get that if queen takes, you have rook d6. So, but even then, there's queen c7, so your rook can't really go anywhere. Also, what if rook takes? So, yeah, be careful. Like, I understand that you want this fork and you want to try and pick up some material with it, but it doesn't work. Good eye for thinking about the fork though. Almost a pork, haha. Alright, so we get this rook c2. Now, knight has to come back, because that knight on b8 isn't doing anything. So, knight d7, double up the rooks. Let's say knight goes to b6, trying to get to c4. Now, what do you think we should do here? I don't really see a very effective way of stopping knight c4 right away. So we could just play knight d2, yes, but your a4 is also under attack. So I think you have to prioritize on, well, what to save. So, what do you think we should do now? If you play knight d2, you're losing a4, so careful with that. I see there is a lot of heat for e4, but still you're losing a4, so you have very limited choices. Yeah, queen b5. Good job, prince. Gotta do this queen b5, defend a4, and after that, so now we're also attacking a5, so black kind of has to play this knight c4. Now, after knight c4, what do you think we can do? Is it time to start this knight d7, knight d2 idea? Or do you still want to try and do knight c5, I guess? Yeah, I think it's about knight, I think knight d2 should be, I think it's about time. Good job, chat. So, after knight d2, black kind of has to take it, right? Because we're attacking this knight with what? 1, 2, 3, 4 different attackers, and it only has one defender, so you do really have to take. So, after knight takes d2, what do you want to take it back with? Rook, knight. If you take it with knight, then where do you want to place your knight? if you take it to the rook, you do know that you're just gonna play rook c2 back soon anyways. Yeah, I think we do have to take it with the rook, because even if you take it with the knight, we still have to bring the knight back, because this knight actually does belong on b3, and I think taking with the knight is a little bit more pointless compared to taking with the rook, because when you take it with the knight, you're also taking away this attacker on here, so there could be some queen d7s, compared to when there was this, if you take it to the rook, queen d7 doesn't really make much sense anymore. Well, actually, you could take. There's a steer for k7. Yeah, never mind. I don't like this. I don't like this for white. Nope, let's not take that. I mean, hold on. We can just bring the rook back. Still want to attack this. There's a rook c8. Alright, now I like this. Rook goes, rook c6. Okay. So, I kind of think, I think it could be simply, I think it's a transposition, whether you take it with knight or rook, but taking it with rook seems a little bit more appealing just because you keep the pressure on the knight, on the pawn. So, now, we'd already talked about queen d7 a little bit, so let's talk about queen a8. Let's bring the rook back, rook d8, keep in mind something like rook b8, it's not as appealing as it looks because we can simply play queen c6, and now this endgame is also much better for white because that's a clear target. Now you also don't really have space. Black is very defensive. So let's say rook d8. Now what? What do you want to do with white? We've talked about converting advantage earlier, also a lot in camp, so I'm rooting for you, Chess King, to find a lot of these moves. So in the camps we actually saw some different games about that was related to converting advantage, and we talked about how you convert like spatial advantage to structural, and then you kind of like transformed it back to material, and then you gave up that material. That was a very interesting game actually. I'm going to show it in one of the YouTube classes too. So, good job, Chess King. Proud of you. Rook c6. So after rook c6, we have kind of full control of the open file, and so this is what I'm talking about. You see you have advantage. Now you just have to figure out how to put it into good use, basically. Gamer. Yes, I understood that you meant rook c6 too. So now what shall we do with white? Keep in mind this is something that's this is kind of where most of the intermediate beginners or even like 2400 players would start messing it up, because they are very focused on what to do in the queen side that they forget on they have other pieces, they can advance other things, they can just patiently wait for opponents to mess up. So what move do you think we should do? And yes, it is a good idea to create one more weakness. That's always a good idea. The more weakness, the better. I like the idea of h4 honestly, but I think it's maybe we can prepare it better with something like g3 first. Yeah, we can play g3. Yeah, good job. We're gonna do this h4 soon enough. So the whole idea now, king g7. Now what do you want to do? No, the one thing that I do not agree with is the idea of f3 e4. Unfortunately, this doesn't really work. It looks very appealing, but the problem with it is that you don't want to give your opponent chances to slip away. We did some segments of slippery classes, right? Opponent slipping away, I slipping away. So we don't really want to give opponent a chance to try and just get away. But yeah, G3 is just one of those moves. So G3, you did it to prepare better for H4, that is correct. But the one idea to have on what to do is kind of like this king. What do you want to do with your king? Because all of your pieces are in a very interesting position. So now what? What shall we do with the king? Also, a little hint, take a look at the title of the class. That should give you a better idea on what to do with the king, right? King G2, yes, possible, but F1 is better. We kind of want to go King F1 because we are hoping to create some more chances in the king side. Now that we have advantage in the queen side, the center is somewhat just closed up. Well, maybe that's not the right way to say it. It's not as mobile. That would be dangerous for us. So King F1. Yeah, well, Chess King, I'm not sure if you want to go all the way to D3, but I do like the idea of getting the king to B1 so we can go do stuff in the king side, right? So, black is just a little clueless, just waiting around. Now, what do you think we should do as white? So you know the idea that you want to get this king to queen side. Now all you have to do is figure out the best way to do it. Ah, glad to know G3 is making more sense now. I was kind of hoping one of you guys would tell me Rook C2 first and then the king goes, because you don't really, if you play like king to C2, there could be some chances of like take on C6 with the queen and then play Rook C7. So what I'm talking about is even if you get the king here, there could be some chances for black to get some breathing chances. So we don't really want to do that. We kind of want to keep it all tied up. We want to just Rook C2, just get the king to go to his holiday from that side. So black is still kind of clueless, just waiting around. Now let's just get the king away. We finally got our king to the safe space, and anybody who wants to talk about what else black could do, feel free to just let me know in chat if you see anything that could look concerning for whites that black could do. Potentially e5 could be something, but even e5, there's always queen d5. And yeah, that would be interesting. Ah, nice to know you guys are watching from Iran. Glad to know, because my parents are still in Iran, so I do know that the internet is a huge problem, among other things. But, so, glad to know you are watching. Kind of makes me a little more proud. So, we got the king to b1. Now what? We said we want to do stuff in the king side, so rook b6 doesn't really go with that spirit. If you wanted to just double the rooks up, you could have done it before you brought the king. So I don't think that really goes with the flow. Queen b7 for black. I think let's just go one move back so I can actually do this queen b7. I think the problem is what if just take and I just play like rook a6 and I'm picking a5 up. Then I just have this pass pawn, and this is much better for whites now. This endgame is pretty winning. So black doesn't really have enough moves, just kind of waiting around. So why even move to the queen side, asked Javier. Because we want to do stuff in the king side. We want to start a pawn march. We want to start bringing the pieces back to go to the king side. So that's what we kind of want to do. Nope, none of the moves that I've seen so far are suggesting good stuff in the king side. So I do like the idea of f3 g4, but you gotta prepare it better. You gotta start bringing a little bit more pieces to the king side. Yeah, black doesn't want to trade. All black is doing basically is just waiting and just asking you, what do you want to do? So black is just waiting, and it's giving you complete control, so all you have to figure out is how to use this. And the problem is that you can't really use the C file advantage. You can't directly use it, let me put it that way. You can use it to put pressure on all of the other's opponent's pieces. Well, yeah, we could try. I do. Ooh, I see the right move. Good job, Queen E2. Very nice, Kanan. Queen E2. Yes, Rook C1 coming up right after this one. So Queen E2 is best because we are hoping to start exploiting these weaknesses with G4, with putting direct pressure on H5. So in the game, black simply played Queen B7, and I assume his idea was, if you were to play G4 now, I can play like Queen E7, try to cover up a little bit. You take here, I'll just take over there. Take, this is still pretty better for white, so don't get me wrong, I still like this more for white, but G4 would give black some breathing chances. And for those of you who have watched any other video from me, you know that I always recommend to just put pressure on the opponent, even psychologically, ergo just on psychology, and don't let your opponents take easy outs. Don't let opponents take easy space. So yeah, Rook C1, good job everybody, especially Prince and others who have suggested Rook C1. So yes, Rook C1 is the best one to do right now. So after Rook C1, black could just keep working around with the king and see how it goes, which is what's happened in the game. Or black could try to exploit something like f5. What do you guys think about f5? Because f5 is stopping this g4 idea, at least momentarily. So what do you think is the best move after f5? Me take this g4 area away so you guys can think a little bit better. F3 is interesting, but F3, yeah, you're still trying with G4. Yeah, I think F3 is okay, but it's not the best move. There is something even more accurate. Oops, let's do this F5. So what do you think is the most accurate one? This is actually a very interesting move. So I'm gonna actually go ahead and call it a Grandmaster level move. So let's see who here is in a Grandmaster level. I am against playing f4 right now, because if you play f4, you're just closing everything for yourself. So, Canon, a little bit of hint. Usually the Grandmaster level moves aren't some casual sacrifice. They are a little bit more strategic, or one of those moves that you're just, oh my god, I just brought this piece from that side, why would I go back? It's usually more of that style. So I hope this tip helps a little bit. Oh yes, good one, Bobak. Queen b5, yes. You gotta do this Queen b5. I said that, I agree. f3 g4 is a very interesting choice. I think it works. I don't have anything against it, but Queen b5 is that one move that kind of blows your mind. If you play something like Queen a8, now I can play Rook b6. Now you weakened your 7th rank and your e6, so I can't come exploit that, right? If you don't play there, if you just simply try to take it, now I have a pass pawn, and your rook is kind of just hanging around for this pawn, this bishop. This rook is kind of hanging around for this pawn. So that's why we like queen b5. We like to just like lay these little traps for opponent and just wait around and just have easier wins. Queen b5 would be an easier win. F3 is an interesting move, but the one thing that I don't like about it. Alright, actually bishop g3. Thank you, Prince, in the chat. I think rook e6 is still doing good for black, for white, because rook c6 is coming. So probably rook d6 is the best move for black to try and stop that. Not take, and maybe still queen b5. Maybe e4 now. No, I think we gotta go with queen b5 still. And black seems to be kind of holding it a little bit better. So that's, yeah, f3 bishop g3. So exactly, let's not give opponent chances to slip away. Alright? We don't like slippery opponents. I am a slippery opponent. So if you're ever playing with me, make sure you actually just tie it up and don't let me slip away, because I've shown some segments on Twitch and here. I've had some very lost games and I just kind of ran away with half a point or the full point. So make sure you keep your points together, because yeah. Actually, yeah, make sure you come and play us more on Twitch, because I see a lot of the YouTube viewers or my camp kids, and they are not fully informed about our Twitch channels. So yeah, just make sure you come and play with us. I think we're doing again. I'm at least there on Thursday and Friday, probably Saturday too. So, talking about f5 and queen b5. Now let's say black simply plays this king g7. Now what shall we do? Do you think this is again one of those moves that is kind of mind-blowing? I do like the idea of playing like f3 g4, but still there's a problem. You won't be able to break through if f3 take on g3. You can't even play rook g1 because your c6 is falling. So this is not really helpful. I don't have a personal Twitch channel, and I am pretty sure I won't have it this semester at least, because this is my MCAT year and I am trying to just focus on that at least until January. So we have the Chess Club Twitch account, just STL I think STL Chess Club, that's it. So what should we do in this position? Anybody wants to try queen back to b5? One thing that I will let you know about Petrosian is that he really likes taking his sweet time. So it won't, so whenever you're looking at Petrosian's game, it's always a good chance that you repeated some moves. Also psychological pressure. That's one of the big things I learned from reading my system book from Nimzovich and watching any of Petrosian games. Just repeating a little bit of moves and getting the opponent in the mindset of, alright, maybe my opponent wants to give me a draw. Like, nope, no draw for you today. So good thinking. We see queen b5 is the best one. Queen c2 or g4, these are some of the moves that still work, but they are just not the most accurate one. The problem with g4 is you take back, and now what to do? You play like rook a6, possible, but now there's this like, it just feels like white is kind of giving black some too much breathing room, and that's what I don't like. So we have to figure out what the opponent wants. We played this rook c1, now we gotta go back to b5. I don't know what is the idea behind queen c2, so I'm a little uncertain on what to think about queen c2. It's definitely not a bad move. I don't really know what's my next move. That's my... So queen b5. Queen a8 is actually the best one, because if you were to take it over here, I'll just take back. And we talked about this endgame. This is a little bit better version compared to when the pawn was on f5, but it's still pretty unpleasant for black. Just push that pawn, get that knight, push that pawn, a little bit more. There you go, b7. Oh boy, this is pretty lost, right? Alright, hopefully I've convinced you with my idea to exchange queens. So if you are actually playing a lower rated opponent or someone your level, it is a good idea to lay these little traps with exchanging stuff. That's what I actually do too. Oh my god, I'm sitting here giving up all of my little techniques. Oh boy. But yeah, because usually lower rated or same level opponents are more inclined to just wanting to exchange pieces because they think then there's less pieces to mate them or less pieces for you to take. So it is a good idea to find an exchange that works in your favor and do it, like this queen b5. But of course Unzicker was also a very high level grandmaster, so he didn't really go for those little tricks. But so now we are finally in a position that we're actually gonna start doing stuff in the king side. So a little bit of heads up, this is a little unorthodox move, especially when we're trying to just attack in the king side. So white played f4, which I don't fully understand myself. I thought maybe g4 right now, or e4. I thought e4 might be a little bit better, because if take, then we can just like a little trap here again. So we are kind of trying to lay a little bit more traps. That's like, I thought e4 was interesting, but then again, like bishop e7, maybe we can try rook c7 now, or e5 maybe. I think these are some interesting moves. Alright, so we just talked about queen b5, queen a8, and f4. So f4 is actually a very good move. The thing is, if you black waited too long, if he plays f5 now, it is losing because of an immediate knight c5. Or I also think rook b6, rook c6 is also pretty lost for black, because everything is just weak over here on the 6th rank. So f5 doesn't work. So Unzicker just kind of waited around to see what's white's idea, and now we finally bring the queen back. And it is again one of those, this game was one of those games that there were a lot of repeating, so I thought it's also psychologically interesting to share. So now we are finally ready for g4. And the good thing about g4 is that if you play something like queen e7 now, like what we talked before, like once we talked about g4 a little before, and there was queen e7 and we talked about this position, but the rook was on c2 and the pawn was on f2, so we couldn't really get the pieces there in time. But now we can just play queen here and rook h1, and that's pretty lost, right? One queen should be enough. So let's say take, now queen e7. What do you want to do with white? You know you have advantage, and you have converted this advantage from just space to, well, it's still a pretty huge spatial advantage, but you actually have a clear target. You actually have a real attack to go after. And there was a question earlier about what book to do. I think some of the best books that I would recommend are, so tactics are great, playing online is great, but the best way to actually improve your chess is to read the books that have like full games or more focused on middle game and are actually teaching you how to think, what to think, how to theme. And it's usually a lot of commentary. Those are good. I really like the Gelfand books. I like the Nimzovich My System books, actually up here. I like the Fischer 60 Memorable Game. There are so many great books around. Just make sure you find one that has commentary in it. Kasparov, the 5 books from Kasparov, my great predecessors. That's also a great move. Alright, good job, Chess King. H5. Rook H1 can come later. Now let's just do this H5 first. So in the game, Black plays Queen F6. You can clearly see that you have advantage here, but you just have to kind of be a little bit more careful on how you are wrapping up your game. So, what does this Queen F6 want? Good middle game book. That's I think just something that's pretty nice. The chapters are pretty nice. I really like the Yusupov of 9 books. There are actually 9 books, and it has like 3 different trios. So that's a very good book to look into. It has teams, it has puzzles. Middle game, I think the Fisher book is pretty nice. Fisher 16 memorable game. Alright, so what does the queen want? The queen wants Queen F5 check and exchange your queen, right? So let's get away. Yeah, let's get away from this check. So after King A2, Black kind of just played King G7, just still kind of just hanging around, seeing what White wants. And White is actually very dominant right now, so Black is just trying to defend every single move that's White doing. And finally, Queen back to F2, we want Rook G1, right? So Black tries to kind of copy-paste the idea of running to the other side with King F8, but it's kind of too late. And this is another great move that I wish we had more time for me to actually ask you guys. So if you're watching it later and if you want to pause it, make sure you do it and think about this move. Otherwise, Knight D2. Knight D2 is one of those other moves, like the Petrosian moves. Like you go to B7, I'm just gonna go back to B3. You go back to B3 and you are giving your opponent some hopes of repetition, but you have no intentions of doing the repetitions. Because if you actually made the mistake to play like Knight F3, now there's B3, so careful with those. So, Knight B3, Rook goes back to A7, now Queen H2. Now we want just Rook G1, Queen H8, launch 5 kind of different mates. Bishop F6, and alright, this is actually another great move, so I'm gonna wait very briefly just to get 1 or 2 responses in the chat. So White to move, what do you think we should do? It is almost done. We're almost very like 2-3 more moves left in this game, so it would be very great if someone could tell me what to do now. So you can see that we have advantage in the queen side, we got some stuff going on in the king side. Thank you, Babak. Rook C8, good job. If take, we would simply take back, and now just F5, this is super winning. Just queen goes to B8, and mate's coming up, Rook E8 mate, you're losing A7, and alright, so Black simply played Rook D7. Now we can bring in the knight, right? If you make the mistake of taking on C8, I'll pick this up and pick that up later. So, after knight C5, Black just played B3, because king takes B3. We're trying to promote our kings, huh? In the game, Black played Rook D6, and I'm just kind of waiting for one final blow. What do you think is the best move for White? And with this move, Black just kind of gave a check and then resigned. So what do you think is the best move? Make sure you always think about moves with checks, takes, threats. We don't really have much of a check or take going on, because Rook D8 is still, we're kind of just using that 8th rank as more of a pressure point. Yeah, good job, Prince. F5. Great. He just did a Rook B6, King A2, and Black resigned because, well, the queen is on huge trouble. This Rook is in a big problem. Knight, whoops, nope, that pawn. That pawn is actually safe. Knight D7 is coming up. So, yeah. This was a very interesting game, especially to me. Psychologically, just repeating, I did learn and I did annoy my opponents a lot with this whole repetition stuff. So, I hope you guys learned from this game as well, and you will use it. Preferably not against me when you play me on Twitch channel, but I understand if you do that too. So without much more comments, I am gonna leave you to go enjoy Var's lecture, and I might actually come join that too as soon as I get a little bit more coffee. So this was a very good session. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you, Ben Simon, for monitoring it all the way from the other end. And alright, I will see